Howdy, my name is Ava. I am one of the current graduate assistants for professional school advising through the Career Center here at A&M. And today I just wanted to talk about the MCAT, just MCAT 101. So, the basics of what the MCAT is, what you can expect on test day, some resources, and some general just tips to stay on track because the MCAT is a very, very important part of your path towards medical school. So first, what is the MCAT? If you're not already aware, it stands for Medical College Admission Test. So it is a standardized test required for admission to most medical schools. I say most because technically there are a couple that do not require it, but those are kind of out there. You really need to take the MCAT for medical school for most. And the MCAT is about 7.5 hours long with breaks, and that's if you're taking all of the given break time, which you don't technically have to, and I'll get into that. And the MCAT does not only test a wide array of scientific concepts and topics, but it also really tests your ability to critically think and analyze passages. So the MCAT is not expecting you to know every single scientific concept that appears in a passage they might give you, but they do expect you to be able to work through really difficult problems, challenges in a time crunch. Because, I mean, this exam is one component of medical school seeing if you would be a good physician. So that ability to critically think and problem solve is very, very important. So for the score range, the lowest score you can get on the MCAT is a 472 and the highest is a 528. And the MCAT is a scaled test, meaning they don't give you a percentage correct. That's not what your score means. Your score means your percentile kind of ranking in accordance to everyone else who took the MCAT. So, for example, a 528 would be a 100th percentile score, and something like a 501, 502 would be around a 50th percentile score. So, if you get a score around here, which is the test taker average currently, that doesn't mean you got 50% of the exam correct. It just means you did better than or as well as 50% of people who took the MCAT. So again, this is the test taker average around a 501, 502. So if you imagine a bell curve, a 501, 502 is right at the top of that bell curve. To be competitive, though, you're wanting to get a little bit more to the right on that bell curve, as the matriculant average for MD programs, as of this year, is around a 511, 512. I believe AMC was reporting for 2025 or entry year 2025 that the average was a 512. So you're wanting to get a score around here to be competitive for medical schools. But there are some schools that have higher averages than this. So I really encourage you to research the programs you're interested in to see what kind of MCAT scores is their average. And that's where you can start setting your goals. But at least you want to be shooting for a score around this range. Next, for the MCAT structure, there are four sections. The first section, and they are always going to appear in this order on the MCAT, is Chemical and Physical Foundations of Biological Systems, often shortened to ChemPhys. And that section is 59 questions in 95 minutes, so about an hour and a half. And it tests a lot of general chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, things like that. It's kind of in the name, and it ties it to biological systems. Also, most MCAT questions are associated with the passage. There are some discretes, which means that it's just a standalone question, but it's not just going to ask you 59 questions of, organic chemistry reactions. They're asking you often to read passages and be able to have the outside knowledge ready when you need it, and also find information in the passage that will help you get to the right answer. The next section is critical analysis and reasoning skills, often abbreviated to CARS. And that section is 53 questions and 90 minutes long, so a little bit different from the others. This section is unique because technically you do not need any outside scientific knowledge to do well on this, because essentially what it is, it's a reading section of the exam. They're not asking you questions or making you read passages that are about like medicine or science. Often they're about music, art, history, language, all kinds of things. So you get 9 passages in this span of time, and there's usually about, I believe, 7 questions associated with each passage. And The challenge is that they're not often very easy questions. You have to really, really critically think through these passages and answer the questions based on that critical analysis that you've done. So this section is often difficult for people because it's hard to just study. You can't do flashcards, you can't do any of that. You really need to practice your skill of critical analysis there. The third section is biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, often shortened to bio-bio. That section is 59 questions long and it's 95 minutes. And that tests a lot of your biology, biochemistry, genetics, kind of the random biology topics. A lot of them are covered in this section. And it's similar to ChemPhys in that there's lots of passages as well, and you do need to often find information in the passages to get you towards that right answer. Because oftentimes they're not asking you just a simple, what's this amino acid? They're asking you, here's this whole big graph, and here's this big structure, and maybe what amino acid would react with the structure. So you have to be able to critically think through all of that as well. And the last section is psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior, often shortened to psych-soc. And that section is 59 questions, 95 minutes long. So this tests a lot of psychology topics, sociology topics, a little bit of statistics, but I would say it's really, really heavy on the psychology and sociology topics. So this is what your test day is going to look like. And you see here that each section is about an hour and a half. So between each section, you do have breaks. So between ChemPhys and cars, you're going to have a 10-minute break available to you. Between cars and bio-bio, you're going to have a 30-minute break, which is often what people consider lunch. And then during or between bio-bio and psych-soc, you have another 10-minute break. And if you add up all that time, it's about 7.5 hours, give or take a few minutes in the beginning for tutorial time. Yeah, once you get through that, you are good to go. So most people will take at least some of the time for their breaks to go get water, use the restroom, whatever they need to do. Technically, though, you could sit there and go through all of these without taking a break, though. So I recommend you make use of your time, and when you're doing practice exams, you utilize that time wisely so that you're prepared on test day and you know what you need to do during that time. So, for the path to MCAT success, I know that this whole process can be very, very overwhelming. And believe me, I was once there and I know that I did not know where to start. But this is kind of my advice based on what I did and what worked for me. So, first, you do need to decide when you want to apply to medical school. Do not just take the MCAT because oh, I think I'm going to apply maybe in a couple or a few years. No, you want to know when you're going to take it. Reasoning for that is that a lot of schools have rules on the MCAT kind of timeline. So a lot of schools will not take scores over 2 or 3 years old. So typically you want to take the MCAT the spring before you apply. You can take it earlier than that. It's really up to you. The MCAT is typically offered January through September, though, so you need to plan somewhere in that timeline for you to get it done. But I will say, most people, if they are wanting to go to medical school straight out of undergrad and they take 4 years to do undergrad, most people will be applying to medical school at the end of their junior year. And in that case, you would want to take the MCAT the spring of your junior year. Some people take it early fall, but I would say most people take it in the spring. But that is up to you. So, second part of all of this planning is you need to decide which resources will work for you. And in the next slide, I'll go into a little bit more depth about that, about like the different resources, what they offer. But with those resources, you want to create a study plan as well. Usually people study for around 3 to 6 months. I will say that if you're a full-time student while you're studying, that timeline is probably going to be closer to the 5 or 6 months. I know for me, as a full-time graduate student working, doing all the other things outside of school, I took about 5 months and that was perfect for me. If you have a whole summer maybe to dedicate to MCAT studying, that could maybe be pushed into 3 months. But especially if you're doing the studying during school time, I would not try to do 3 months. It's definitely doable, and you'll probably see online there are people that are able to do that, but you're going to be putting yourself under a lot of pressure, and the MCAT is already stressful as is. Um, Next, you want to stick to that study schedule that you make for yourself. and practice. Practice is probably the number one tip I have. You need to practice using questions and full-length exams. If you're just doing a lot of content review, that's not going to help you get down those really important MCAT test taking strategies. And lastly, on your big test day, you want to be calm and confident. It is a very stressful idea to, have been putting all this work towards this exam and the day finally comes, but you really have to trust the work that you've put in and beat the hell out of the MCAT. So yes, it's a lot, but you have to just break it down. Break down all your study plan, break down your schedule, break down your resources, and that will bring you more success than just kind of saying, "Oh, I'll take it in March," and uh-oh, it's already March and I haven't really sat down and studied for it. Like you have to really be persistent about this plan. So here's some MCAT resources. And again, you want to consider what's going to work for you. Consider your study style, consider how you have done well, especially in your science classes, and decide what you need out of MCAT resources. And what I mean by that is, all our brains work differently, right? So some of us need a lot more structure. We need a resource that's going to give us a calendar with modules to do every day or questions to do every day or what have you. But other people are very good at structuring everything on their own, making their own plan, and all they need is maybe some practice questions. So you have to decide what you need out of a resource. So here's a few examples of some. If you're looking for question banks, the AAMC MCAT prep materials do have lots of questions, and so does UWorld. UWorld is not associated with AAMC. AAMC are or is the organization that writes the MCAT, but UWorld has a lot of good questions as well, and a lot of students find success with that. I have AAMC MCAT prep material bolded because I think that is the gold star resource. If you had to only get one thing, I would say it would be the AMC prep materials because again, this organization is writing the MCAT, so you're going to get the most accurate questions, the most accurate full lengths in this kind of material set. And again, it's really about developing that special MCAT test taking strategy. UWorld can be really helpful to get content down, but it's some people say UWorld questions are harder than AMC prep materials. You really want to know like what to expect on test day. So they're both good, but I definitely recommend getting the AMC MCAT prep materials. Also, like I mentioned before, full-length practice exams are very important to do. There's a lot of different places that offer full-length practice exams. I think I don't have it listed here, but I think even UWorld does. A lot of the places that offer question banks also have practice exams. But again, AMC MCAT prep materials has about six prep exams, and then I know Blueprint, you can also get like a set of exams there too. These are not as accurate. Again, they look like the same MCAT interface, which is helpful to get used to that. But again, AMC MCAT prep materials has the most accurate ones. If you're looking into courses, there are a few out there. The really popular ones are Kaplan, Blueprint, and Princeton. These can be expensive. They can be helpful though. So just consider if you need to do this. Don't just think, by throwing money at a resource, you're going to be successful. Again, you really need to decide what you need out of a resource and how best you can put your work into it. Some people don't need courses, while other people who are very, very busy maybe need a course that's going to give them a lot more structure. But these are just a few ideas there. And also remember that there are a lot of free resources out there, and a lot of people are successful only maybe even using free resources and maybe using one of these like AMC MCAT prep materials. So I know for me, I used a lot of pre-made Anki decks you can find online. A really popular one is called Miles Down. There's other ones out there too. You want to just find what's going to work for you. There's also lots of people who will post free YouTube videos breaking down MCAT content. A lot of times you can find channels of people who have done well on the MCAT, which can help. Things like YouTube videos can help just for content review too. Even if you're going on a walk or you're on a drive and you want something to listen to, using even those times in your day to just get some MCAT prep in can be helpful. And there's lots more out there as well. So definitely look around, look at trusted sources though. Make sure you're getting something legit, you're not wasting your time. Ultimately, the AMC topic, like materials list, is going to be the most accurate thing. But yeah, there's lots of free resources out there. So for staying on track, You want to start your studying by familiarizing yourself with the topics that the MCAT can test you on. So, like I mentioned, there is a AMC MCAT topics sheet. If you just Google that, you will probably find the link, and I believe they do update that every year. It's a very, very long document. I wouldn't literally sit there and read all of it, but that list is going to tell you what the MCAT can test you on. The MCAT it is always different, even per section. Like for example, in the Chem Phys section, you might on test day go in and have tons of organic chemistry and maybe a little bit of physics, and then another test taker on another test day might have a ton of physics and maybe not as much general chemistry. So you're not like test takers are not getting the exact same breakdown of questions every time or the same breakdown of topics, but you want to be familiar with all of them. A really common phrase is that what you need to know for the MCAT is about a mile wide and an inch deep. Basically, just saying there's a big, like, broad kind of array of things you need to know, but you don't usually need to know things in ton of detail. But you want to familiarize yourself with what can be tested and begin practice questions early. It is really, really important to build test taking skills for the MCAT. I cannot stress that enough. Some people will divide their time into just content review for maybe a couple months and then practice questions. I would say give yourself, you know, maybe a couple weeks of just content review if you're kind of just wanting to put your toe in the water there and see what to expect, but then get into practice questions. Even if you're scared, even if you feel like you don't know anything, start reviewing during practice questions. Don't wait to do that. I would say about after a month of studying consistently, you want to take full length exams and you want to take those consistently as well. And like for what I did, I took basically an exam every single week for months. So I think I took about 12 or 13 full-length exams. That's a lot. You don't need to do that many. A lot of people will only do maybe the six that AMC offers, but you want to be consistently doing those. And you want to take those also with exam day conditions to prepare yourself for the actual test day. What I mean by that is mimicking what, is going to happen on test day for you. For example, like your water bottles, even if they're closed like this, you cannot bring those in the testing room. They will have lockers for you in the testing center. You can store your water, your snacks, whatever you need there, but you cannot bring anything with you into the testing room. Even things like jewelry, like if you have an Aggie ring, you cannot bring it into the testing room. So even just getting used to things like that, that way that doesn't catch you off guard will help you. Also, another thing, remember that the MCAT does not allow you to use a calculator. That might sound scary, but I promise the math is doable. You will have a kind of whiteboard with a little dry erase pen that you can use during the exam. So you can definitely still write down and, work through questions that way. What I would suggest you do during your practice full-length exams is definitely don't bring a calculator, but even go out to, a dollar store or Target and get a little whiteboard for yourself and get a little dry erase marker. Again, that way you can practice while you're doing the exam, having a little dry erase thing. It's all about being prepared for that test day, just mentally and knowing what to expect. Once you do those practice full-length exams, you need to do thorough review. And what I mean by that is don't just sit there and click through all the questions and say, okay, yeah, sure, like I kind of understand that. Let me move on. I mean, you need to go through every single one. You need to check a question and see, even if you got it right, did you get it right because you guessed or because you actually knew? And then read through the explanation that, the source gives you. Did you get it right for the right reason or did you mess something up? And also, why are the wrong questions wrong? Like, you want to thoroughly review every single question, every single answer choice to understand all of that. I know for me, I would even have a notebook that I would just write down like different topics in it that I knew I needed to brush up on. Even if I got questions right, I would still sometimes take notes on it just to kind of hammer all that information in. And you want to have an idea generally after you've taken a few MCAT like practice exams of what score you're kind of sitting at. I would say the first couple exams don't take the score, for face value, because a lot of that is getting used to the endurance of sitting there for so long and taking a long exam. But eventually you want to start being able to see kind of how, if you took the test right now, how you would do. Do not take a real MCAT for practice. Some people will say, oh, just do that because you can always retake, which is true. You can retake, but medical schools will be able to see all of your MCAT scores, even if you retake. So on test day, you want to have an idea based on the practice exams you've already taken of how you're going to do, kind of an average. Most people will take an average of all of their scores. So again, though, it's really important to mimic test day conditions during those because if you have your phone or you have, your water and your food with you and you're kind of just chilling taking the exams, that score might be different than what would happen if you were taking it without water, for example. So just consider that. And that is pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this answered your questions. If you were wondering anything about the MCAT, if you have more questions, though, please feel free to contact us. Our phone number for the office is this right here, and then this is our email. So if you have any questions, please stop by there. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day and good luck on the MCAT and the rest of your medical school journey.